By the time the elevators emptied out for the night and the last pair of designer sneakers squeaked across the polished marble lobby, Elon Mercer already knew which screens had been left unlocked. He pushed his cleaning cart out of the supply closet like it was a disguise he was still getting used to wearing, its squeaky wheel announcing him long before anyone bothered to look. The towering glass walls of Lumendyne's headquarters reflected him back as a warped silhouette, navy coveralls, company-issued badge clipped to his chest, a rag tucked into his back pocket like an afterthought. Inside the building, monitors still glowed from deserted workstations, casting a soft electric haze down the dim hallway. He had spent 3 months learning this building like other people learned a language. The rhythm of the coffee machines. The timing of the elevator doors. Which senior engineers stayed past midnight, eyes glazed blue from dashboards. Which team leads locked their screens religiously and which trusted proximity badges and good intentions to protect a $2 billion infrastructure. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Only the cleaning crew and the night security guard moved through the skeleton of Lumendyne after 10 p.m., and Elon had quickly discovered that both were functionally invisible. Executives breezed past them without slowing, mid-sentence on calls that sounded like another language, MRR, runway, Series D, burn. Engineers navigated around yellow caution cones like part of the decor, never looking down to see the hands that held the mop. Being unseen was an asset. It always had been, long before a navy jumpsuit and a plastic name tag made it official. Elon, you're on 12 and 13 tonight, Rosa said, her voice half yawn, half apology, as she checked boxes on her clipboard. Her ponytail was frizzing out of its scrunchie, the end of the shift already hanging off her shoulders. 12 and 13, he repeated, forcing a tired smile. Got it. She didn't know that 12 was where product and security overlapped in an uneasy shared floor plan. She just knew that someone had spilled pho on a carpet near the war room that afternoon and facilities had logged an urgent ticket before the investors' demo tomorrow. Investors' demo. The phrase had moved like static through every conversation in the building that week. Even the baristas in the lobby cafe had repeated it, like an incantation they didn't fully understand but knew mattered. Elon pretended not to care. He pretended to be what people saw when they looked at him. A man in his early 30s with calloused hands and a quiet voice, pushing a cart that held more cleaning solvents than secrets. But as the elevator hummed toward the 12th floor, his fingers rested lightly on the battered tablet strapped to his cart, where a simple, innocuous inventory app sat full screen. Beneath the surface, behind layers of utilities and low-level operating system menus, lived everything he'd spent the last 3 months quietly building. He told himself he was just mapping. Just watching. Just proving, in the privacy of his own mind, that the world's fastest-growing security company didn't actually know how to lock its own doors. The elevator dinged, opening onto a hallway that smelled like stale coffee and exhausted ambition. The sign on the glass doors read, Lumendyne, Trust Engineered. Beneath it, in smaller font, someone had stuck a sticker, Move fast, break assumptions. Cute, Elon murmured. His badge, green, with a tiny broom icon in the corner, wouldn't open the doors. But the night security guard, Leon, sat at the end of the corridor in his booth, eyes on a bank of monitors more out of habit than attention. Evening, man, Leon called, rolling his chair back to wave a sensor at the door control. The lock clicked open. Evening. Elon pushed the cart through, letting the door whisper shut behind him. Busy night? Leon snorted. Only thing busy is my eyelids trying not to close. You on 12 for that noodle disaster? So the legends are true, Elon said. Leon grinned and swiveled back to his monitors. Hey, watch out for the dragon lady if she's still here. I saw her storming around like the place owed her blood. Elon didn't need to ask who he meant. Verena Kwan, the founder, the face, the myth, had a way of turning into a weather system whenever she walked into a room. People didn't say her name so much as lower their voices around it. He'd seen her twice up close. Both times, she'd been surrounded by a small orbit of senior staff, moving fast enough that her heels seemed to strike sparks from the floor. There was something almost gravitational about her presence. She bent people's posture, their volume, their eye lines, without saying a word. Dragon Lady, he thought, pushing his cart around the corner. Not inaccurate, if you liked your metaphors obvious. The open office area on 12 was a landscape of abandoned concentration. Laptops slept under hoods of half-closed lids, code frozen mid-thought. Whiteboards carried overgrown forests of diagrams and arrows. Cables drooped from monitors like exposed nerves. Elon set out cones near the faux stain, more out of habit than necessity, then knelt to assess the damage. Someone had blotted it with napkins, the broth had dried into a stiff, star-shaped blotch. He put on gloves, sprayed, scrubbed, and let his body fall into the automatic rhythm of work while his mind moved elsewhere. The investor's demo would be built around AegisNet, Lumendyne's flagship intrusion detection system. Every external firewall, every managed device, every asset they secured for clients was supposed to feed its hungry analytics engine. $2 billion in contracts, the internal emails bragged, riding on tomorrow's performance. $2 billion, and Elon had already found 3 ways to get at its underbelly without triggering so much as a warning blink on a dashboard. He hadn't touched any of them. Not yet. There was a difference between knowing you could and proving it to someone who would never believe you. He scrubbed until the stain faded to a faint shadow of itself, like a ghost only he would remember, then stood and straightened his aching back. His gaze slid almost by habit to the nearest workstation. Monitor on. Screen unlocked. A chat window midway through an argument about containerization strategies. Months ago, he would have scowled at the carelessness. Tonight, he just added it to the quiet tally he kept in his head. AegisNet was only as strong as the humans orbiting it, and humans, he'd learned long before this building, were catastrophically predictable. "Excuse me." The voice came from behind him, sharp, clipped, threaded with the kind of impatience that assumed its own importance. Elon turned. Verena Kwan stood 3 meters away, arms crossed, eyes like polished obsidian catching every reflection in the room. In person, she was shorter than she looked on magazine covers. Power made her seem taller. The tailored black pantsuit, the white silk blouse with its precise collar, the single thin gold chain at her throat, nothing about her was accidental. Even the stray flyaway hair near her temple looked like it had been placed there to signal that she worked too hard to care. 2 people flanked her, Arjun, the VP of Engineering, with the permanent squint of someone who stared at monitors for a living, and Mia, Chief of Staff, whose phone might as well have been another appendage. For a fraction of a second, they all stared at one another across the open office. Elon's hand tightened on the handle of his mop. His badge felt heavier against his chest. Then Verena's gaze flicked to the wet patch of carpet, to the cones, to the cluttered desks, and finally, dismissively, back to him. "Is the stain going to be gone by morning?" she asked. "Not hello. Not please." "Yes," Elon said. "Completely?" He considered the faint outline still visible if you knew where to look. 98%, he said. "Unless your investors are bringing forensic lights." Arjun choked on a laugh and immediately turned it into a cough. Mia's thumbs never stopped moving on her phone. Verena's eyes sharpened. "What was that?" "Nothing, ma'am." Elon gestured to his mop. "Just doing my best." Some things leave shadows. Something flickered across her face, impatience, curiosity, annoyance, but it vanished as fast as it came. "Well, do better," she said. "The floor needs to look perfect. People judge what they can't understand by what they can see. If there are stains on the carpet, they'll think there are stains in our code." Elon almost laughed. "If only you knew." "We'll get it as perfect as possible," he said instead. Arjun shifted his weight, eyes drifting to the nearest screen. The workstation where someone had left a terminal window open, cursor blinking patiently next to a prompt that read, "Aegis admin at node 07, $. "Hey," Elon heard himself say, the word leaving his mouth before he could edit it. "If you care about what the investors can see, you might want to enforce locking screens when people walk away. That kind of thing leaves bigger stains than soup." Mia's thumbs paused. Arjun's eyes widened a fraction. Verena turned fully toward him. What did you say? He could have backed down. He saw the path in his mind, the quick apology, the return to anonymity. But something in him, the part that hadn't fully died when he traded a keyboard for a mop, refused to retreat. Your staff leave sessions open, he said, keeping his tone mild, as if he were commenting on the weather. Terminals logged in as admin dashboards unlocked. It's not my place, but, if you're selling security, maybe don't make it so easy for someone like me. Silence landed between them, heavy and brittle. Someone like you? Verena repeated. A stranger with access, Elon said. A badge that opens doors, a cart no one looks at twice. Someone who notices things. Arjun shifted again, discomfort creeping up his spine. We have physical access controls, he said quickly. Cleaners are supervised. Night security. Did you run that observation through our automatic policy engine? Verena asked, her tone suddenly bright with something that might have been mockery. Or is this just vibes? Elon met her eyes. The easy thing would have been to smile and shrink. No engine needed, he said quietly. Just a working set of eyes. She stared at him for a heartbeat. 2. He saw the calculation behind her gaze, the quick assessment of threat level, status, worth. Then she laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, not exactly. It was the sound someone made when a child told them they'd found a monster in the closet. Oh, that's cute, Verena said. She turned slightly toward Mia and Arjun, including them in the joke. Our night cleaner thinks he's a penetration tester. Heat burned up Elon's neck, into his ears. His fingers curled around the mop handle until his knuckles whitened. I'm just saying what I see, he managed. And I'm just saying what I know, she shot back. Our system is audited by 3 external firms. We do red team exercises quarterly. AegisNet monitors every endpoint, every session. You're mopping up soup on a Tuesday night. Stick to that. Arjun's mouth tightened. There was a part of him, Elon guessed, that knew the cleaner wasn't entirely wrong. But hierarchy was a gravity well, and Verena's mass bent his alignment without effort. Mia finally looked up from her phone long enough to offer Elon a small, apologetic smile that never reached her eyes. Verena's gaze dropped to his badge. Elon, is it? She pronounced it carefully, like she was checking a variable name. Yes. Here's a free piece of advice, Elon. Her voice softened, the way people soften their voices before they said something sharp. In this building, expertise and responsibility go together. If you don't carry the responsibility, don't pretend you have the expertise. It just makes you look, she searched for the word. Delusional. Arjun winced. Leon's monitors, down the hall, showed a flicker of movement, but the security guard couldn't hear any of this. Elon's throat tightened. He thought of the years he'd spent in front of black screens and blinking cursors, the competitions, the late-night bug hunts, the little name that had once meant something in obscure corners of the internet. He thought of lines of code he'd written that still lived in tools people used without knowing his handle. He thought of the hospital bills that had swallowed his savings after his sister's accident, the contract that had gone bad, the client who'd decided that paying was optional once the job was done. He thought of the quiet, corrosive shame of applying for jobs he was overqualified for and being told he wasn't a culture fit. Delusional. That landed somewhere deep. I understand, he said, because there was nothing else to say that wouldn't blow up his life in more ways than one. Verena watched him for a moment longer, as if waiting for him to break character. When he didn't, she dismissed him with a small twist of her mouth, already moving on. Mia, we need the updated slide deck by 7 a.m., she said, turning back toward the corridor. Arjun, I want the team on a war room schedule from now till the demo. No one leaves their station without coverage. No more surprises. Her heels clicked away across the polished floor, receding down the corridor toward the executive wing. Her entourage followed. Elon stood in the middle of the open office, the smell of cleaning solvent sharp in his nose, the echo of her laughter still reverberating in his chest. He looked at the unlocked terminal again. AegisNet. Admin session. Cursor blinking. Delusional. It wasn't the first time someone had called him that. People had used other words, idealistic, reckless, naive, but they'd meant the same thing. You're seeing cracks in walls we'd rather pretend are solid. You're shouting fire in a room we insist is warm. He took a breath that felt like standing on the edge of an old rooftop, wind tugging at his jacket. I'll finish the floor, he told himself. Then I'll go home. Then I'll forget this. He resumed mopping, methodically erasing the last traces of faux from the carpet. But his pulse wouldn't slow. Each swipe of the mop felt like dragging a thought across the same groove in his mind. Expertise and responsibility go together. Fine, he thought. Let's see what your expertise looks like when responsibility walks in wearing the wrong badge. It was after 11 when the 12th floor finally fell silent. The last engineer shuffled out, rubbing his eyes, promising the whiteboards he'd be back before dawn. The war room door closed with a soft, exhausted thud. Leon's voice crackled over the floor's speakers. Janitorial, we're doing a final sweep in 20. Shout if you're alive up there. I'm alive, Elon called toward the ceiling. 12's almost done. Copy that, Leon said. Try not to die, too much paperwork. Elon smiled despite the wire of tension humming through him. He moved through the rows of desks, wiping surfaces, collecting stray mugs, aligning chairs. The motions were practiced, but his attention was elsewhere, sketching paths in his thoughts. He had no grand plan. No manifesto. Just an old, familiar itch that had been pushed past tolerance. On the far side of the floor, near the glass wall that overlooked the sleeping city, a cluster of desks formed a loose island. Dual monitors, sticker-bombed laptops, a tangle of USB cables. A whiteboard stood nearby, dense with architecture diagrams that would have meant little to most of the cleaning crew. To Elon, they were a confession written in dry erase. Node 0716, low-Privian agents. Ingest layer, temp token cache. Off-bridge Aegis core. He paused, rag in hand, tracing the lines with his eyes. Somewhere behind this wall, an elevator shaft carried cables and fiber between floors, up to the data center 2 levels above. He'd never been inside that room, his badge didn't authorize it. But he'd learned its footprint from the vibrations in the floor when the cooling units kicked in. He knew more about this building than its architects, in ways that didn't show up on blueprints. He leaned closer to the whiteboard, lips moving silently as he followed the arrows. Off-bridge. Temp token cache. The terminal at the nearest desk still glowed. He walked toward it slowly, as if approaching something wild. No one was left to see him. No one was left to ask why the cleaner was standing behind an engineer's chair. On screen, lines of text scrolled in a log window. The header at the top read, AegisNet, internal events stream. The log ticked with timestamps, IP addresses, decision codes, allow, flag, block. He shouldn't. He knew that. He'd told himself, over and over, that he could withstand the pull of this building's ignorance. That he could mop their floors and ignore the way they left power lying around like toys in a nursery. Verina's laugh echoed in the back of his skull. Delusional. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, almost without conscious decision, he started counting under his breath. 60 seconds, he whispered. That's all you get. His heart thudded in his chest. The old focus slid over him like a familiar coat. He didn't type passwords. He didn't need to. The session was already authenticated, someone had just walked away. Second one, he hit a key combination to open a new terminal tab. His eyes flicked to the prompt to confirm the user context. Second 3, he ran a simple, high-level status command. Nothing malicious. Nothing that wouldn't pass muster as a routine check. Host names flickered past. Second 8, he pivoted to the local processes, scanning for anything that smelled like an off-cache. A service name he'd seen scribbled on the whiteboard blinked back at him from the list. Second 12, he opened the configuration file in read-only mode. The path was practically a cliché/etc/aegis/bridge.yaml. The comments in it were written like love letters from a harried engineer to their future self. Second 18, there it was. A debug flag left on. A local HTTP endpoint bound to localhost only, meant for testing token flows. A comment, to do, disable before production. Someone had promised the future they'd clean up after themselves. The future had been too busy preparing a demo. Second 24, his throat went dry. It would be so easy. No exploits. No buffer overflows. Just a curl command to the right port, with the right parameters, and the bridge would happily hand him a signed token like a doorman holding out a guest pass. He checked the clock in the corner of the screen. 11:23 p.m. Walk away, he told himself. You made your point. To yourself, anyway. But the point wasn't made. Not really. Not until someone else saw what he saw. Second 30, he pulled his battered tablet from the cart and propped it against the monitor base, fingers flying over the screen to bring up the hidden interface he'd built. Under the inventory app, under the facade of barcodes and cleaning schedules, his own code lived like a ghost. He wasn't going to steal anything. He wasn't going to plant a backdoor. He was going to light a flare in the one place Verena couldn't ignore, her own war room dashboards. It took him 6 seconds to mirror the engineer's terminal to his tablet, routing through the most innocuous path he could find. Another 5 to craft a harmless, synthetic attack packet, a request that would look, to AegisNet, like a client system behaving badly. Second 43, he drew a breath, palms sweating, and sent the request to the debug endpoint. Second 46, the bridge accepted it, logged it, and spat back a JSON blob containing a token that might as well have been a skeleton key for internal demonstration environments. Not production. Not client-facing. It was a key to the stage they'd built for tomorrow, not the castle itself. That was enough. His ears rang. He copied the token into his tablet's interface with shaking hands. Second 52, he used the token once. Just once. He pointed it at an internal API that fed status updates to the wall of screens in the war room. He'd seen them earlier, cycling through green checkmarks and reassuring graphs. He didn't touch the underlying systems. He didn't alter any real security posture. All he did was inject a single, temporary message into the stream, a false alert that would last 60 seconds before expiring, its token rendered useless by the simple passage of time. On the other side of the floor, behind the half-closed door of the war room, a bank of large displays glowed. No one was there to see them. Not yet. Second 59, Elon hit enter. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The logs kept scrolling. The cursor blinked. Then, somewhere behind the wall, a relay clicked. On the war room screens, a new banner appeared. Not the usual corporate red, not the neutral gray of an informational notice. A vivid, unmistakable amber flashed across all displays. Text source, internal alert bus. Priority, critical. Message, if your cleaner can do this, what can your enemies do? The letters burned against the glass like an accusation. Elon's pulse pounded in his ears. He had less than a minute before the token expired, before the alert vanished into the log history, a ghost line others would have to dig for. But the visual impact would stick. Screens changed people. That was why they paid for dashboards instead of reading raw logs in the first place. He closed the terminal tab, careful not to leave traces in shell history beyond what could be hand-waved as a clumsy engineer's mistake. He disconnected his tablet's hidden interface, returning it to its obedient inventory screen. On the war room wall, the amber banner pulsed. Somewhere in the building, a monitoring system sent an automatic text to the on-call engineer. Elon heard the vibration of a phone against a desk 2 rows over, the muted curse of someone who thought their night was finally over. He straightened the chair he'd pulled back from the desk. Wiped a non-existent smudge from the monitor. Adjusted his badge. This is it, he told himself. You made your point. Walk away. His feet felt heavy as he pushed the cart toward the elevator, like he was wading through something thicker than air. Behind him, a door banged open. What the? A voice shouted. Arjun. The war room's screens were visible now over Elon's shoulder, reflected in the glass wall that overlooked the city. The amber banner washed the room in warning. Leon, do you see this? Arjun's voice flew down the hallway. We've got a critical internal alert on AegisNet. Who's in the building? The elevator dinged, doors sliding open like a promise. Elon didn't step inside. Leon's reply crackled over the intercom. Just me, the cleaners, and whoever's in the war room. Why, what's, oh? A pause. That's weird. Footsteps pounded toward him. Arjun burst into the open office, hair sticking up from where he'd run his hands through it, phone already pressed to his ear. I don't know yet, he was saying. It's an internal bus message, but the source is weird. No, production looks clean. This looks like, dev? Or staging. I'm pulling logs. His eyes swept the room, passing over Elon once, twice, before snapping back like something had clicked. You, Arjun said, lowering his phone. You're still here. Floor's not done yet, Elon replied, keeping his voice level. Did you see anyone at those desks? Arjun gestured vaguely around them. Anyone on a terminal? Elon held his gaze. Just empty chairs, he said. And a lot of screens that don't lock themselves. Arjun swallowed. On the phone, someone barked his name. Yeah, I'm here, he snapped back, turning away. No, I don't know yet. The message text says. He stopped, eyes flicking involuntarily to Elon's badge, to the mop, to the cart. If your cleaner can do this, what can your enemies do? Color drained from his face. He spun back toward the war room. Verena needs to see this, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. She's going to lose her mind. Good luck, Elon said softly. The elevator doors began to slide closed. Elon tapped the button to hold them, the metal panels freezing mid-motion. On the far side of the floor, down the corridor, another elevator dinged. The executive cars. High priority. Limited access. He didn't have to see her to know who was inside. Verena moved like a storm front. Even at a distance, Elon felt the air shift. Her voice cut through the hallway before she came into view. Why am I being pulled back up here at 11:30, she demanded. This better not be another false positive from the... She stepped into the open office, saw the reflection of the war room screens in the glass, and stopped. Amber light flickered over her face. Her eyes tracked the words, and for the first time since Elon had started working at Lumendine, he saw something crack the surface of her composure. Not fear. Recognition. She strode into the war room, Arjun scrambling to keep up, Mia already dialing someone with the dead-eyed speed of a person who lived on crisis calls. Elon watched her go, the elevator doors still waiting at his back. His ticket to anonymity stood 3 steps away. He could leave now. By the time they pulled logs, rotated keys, and constructed a narrative that didn't involve the possibility that an underpaid cleaner had just waltzed through their sacred staging environment, he'd be at home, stacking dishes in a tiny sink, pretending his hands didn't still remember the feel of a keyboard. The safe thing, the smart thing, was to disappear. Instead, he found himself setting the mop back into its slot, hands suddenly steady. Responsibility and expertise, he thought. You wanted them together? Fine. He stepped away from the elevator. The war room's glass wall threw back a fractured reflection of the scene inside. Verena standing with her arms braced on the console, staring up at the banner. Arjun flanking her, pointing at something on his tablet. Mia in the corner, already whispering into a headset. Elon took one step toward the room. Then another. If he walked in there now, if he opened his mouth and told the truth, everything would change. Maybe they'd fire him on the spot. Maybe they'd call security, the police, every form of authority they could summon to reassert the order he'd just broken. Or maybe, for the first time in years, someone would have to admit that the person holding the mop knew more about their vaunted fortress than they did. His hand closed around the war room door handle. On the other side of the glass, Verena turned her head, as if sensing movement, her eyes snapping toward his dim shape in the reflection. They locked gazes through the glass, the amber light painting both of them in the same warning hue. Her lips parted. The banner on the screens began to flash faster, an automated escalation cutting in. Somewhere behind Elon, Leon's voice crackled over the intercom again, this time tight with alarm. "Ah, Verena? We've got another problem," Leon said. There's a login attempt from outside the building, and I don't think it's part of your demo." The words hit the air like a second thunderclap. Elon froze, his fingers still on the door handle, as the war room erupted into motion. And in the chaos that followed, as sirens started to wail softly in the depths of the building's security system, he realized that his 60-second flare had just lit up something far bigger, and far more dangerous, than his own wounded pride. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. He didn't have time to savor the realization that his 60-second flare had just lit up something far bigger, and far more dangerous, than his own wounded pride. The war room erupted around Verena like a breached hull taking on water. The amber banner still pulsed across every screen, but new windows were already blooming on top of it, connection graphs, geolocation maps, streams of log lines that scrolled too fast to read. "Outside login attempt." The phrase replayed in Elon's mind with a sickening clarity as he stood at the threshold, fingers still curved around the door handle. "Route it to the sandbox gateway," Verena snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut through the layered alerts. "Mirror every packet. I want full PCAP, not summaries. Arjun, tell me if this is an idiot with a script or someone who actually knows what they're doing." "I'm trying," Arjun said, fingers flying over his keyboard. His chair rolled to the side so he could access two consoles at once, screens painting his face in cycling shades of green and red. "They're hitting the legacy OAuth endpoint first, looks like credential stuffing, but they pivoted in under 10 seconds when that didn't work. This isn't random." Mia covered one ear with her palm, the other pressed to her phone. "I'm on with DevOps. They're spinning up isolation nodes for staging. PR wants to know if they need to prep a holding statement. Legal is, no, I don't know yet if any customer data is at risk. We're still, just wait." The building's ambient hum shifted. Somewhere below, power rerouted, fans spinning louder to feed hungry hardware. Blue emergency strips lit up along the baseboards, a subtle change in the glow that made the 12th floor feel suddenly less like an office and more like the control deck of a ship in rough seas. Elon's heart hammered against his ribs. He hadn't caused this, he told himself. He'd just turned on a light in a dark room. Whatever was knocking on the outside now had already been on its way. But the timing pressed against his conscience like a thumb on a bruise. "Leon," Verena barked, not looking away from the nearest monitor, "lock down external access to the building network. Guest Wi-Fi, everything. If someone's piggybacking off a physical connection near us, I want their path as narrow as possible." Leon's voice came back over the intercom, taut with a tension Elon had never heard from him before. "On it. Switching all non-essential networks to restricted mode. Also, the outside login attempt is still going. They're stepping up, not backing off." Arjun swore under his breath. "Yeah, I see it. They just tried our old contractor portal. How the hell did they even know that exists? Because your entire tech stack is documented in job postings and forgotten GitHub repos," Elon thought automatically. Because nothing on the internet truly disappears. Because you're famous now, and famous things draw fire. He opened the war room door. The click of the handle turning was almost inaudible under the storm of keystrokes and buzzing phones, but Verena's head snapped toward him anyway, instincts honed for threats that didn't always come with flashing lights. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded. Her eyes flicked to his badge again, to the broom icon in the corner, to the rags still tied through his belt loop. The amber light painted the navy fabric of his coveralls in an ugly, surreal glow. "I'm still on 12, Elon said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "The hallway's part of my route." "This is not," Mia hissed, covering her phone. "You can't be in the war room. This is a secure area." Secure. The word tasted bitter. Elon could have apologized and backed out. He could have let the door swing shut between them, returned to the world where he pretended not to understand the shapes on their screens. But the graphs flickering on the main display weren't abstract to him. He saw the attack unfolding like something alive. He recognized the contour of the requests, the way the incoming traffic probed and adjusted, avoiding dead ends with eerie speed. Whoever was out there wasn't throwing spaghetti at the walls. They were reading the building's digital pulse as surely as he'd learned to read its physical one. "Your intruder is chaining recon against your public-facing assets," he said, the words leaving his mouth before caution could catch them. "Old endpoints first, then anything that smells like misconfigured off. They've got a mental model of your stack and they're updating it in real time." Arjun's head jerked up. "I didn't say that out loud," he muttered. Vereena's gaze sharpened. "You've got 5 seconds to explain how you know that," she said. "And choose your words carefully." Elon swallowed. Every instinct screamed at him to shut up. Every year of being discounted, dismissed, laughed at for seeing things other people preferred not to, coiled like a spring in his chest. "You wrote a debug bridge," he said, nodding toward the nearest monitor. "Between AegisNet and your off layer. It's still running and staging. Your attacker hasn't found it. Yet. They will." Arjun's face went from pale to flushed. "How do you know about the bridge?" "Because I saw its config file." Elon held up his hands, empty, open. "Read only. I didn't touch the code. I didn't push anything. But I did use the debug endpoint once. To send that message to your screens." Silence hit the room like a dropped curtain. Mia began, then stopped, her expression flickering between fury and disbelief. Vereena stared at him. For a moment, Elon saw nothing but the math happening behind her eyes, the weight of contracts, the shadow of liability, the fragile choreography of trust they sold to people who were now, somewhere out there in the city, sleeping under the illusion of safety Lumendine had promised. "You injected an alert into our internal bus," she said slowly. "From a staging token. In the middle of the night. While working as a cleaner." "Yes." Elon's throat felt dry, but the word came out clear. "In 60 seconds. Humiliation flared with the admission, but underneath it was something else. A jagged, quiet pride. "You admit to compromising our system," Mia said, voice low and deadly. "That's unauthorized access. That's grounds for immediate termination in." "And yet," Elon cut in, surprising himself, "you're all standing here because of it." 3 pairs of eyes snapped back to him. "If I hadn't lit that flare," he continued, gesturing at the still pulsing banner, "would anyone have noticed the outside traffic in time? How many more minutes would they have had to feel around your edges before AegisNet's anomaly thresholds tripped?" Arjun's jaw clenched. He didn't want to admit anything to the cleaner who had just embarrassed his team, but the graphs on the screen made it hard to lie. "The first anomalous pattern hit 6 minutes ago," he said grudgingly. "The alert from the staging bus came in at 3.5. We probably would have noticed the spike. Eventually." "Eventually," Elon repeated. "The difference between we lost the demo environment and we just handed someone a roadmap to our architecture is a matter of how long they get to wander." Vereena's nostrils flared once, then stilled. "Arjun," she said without taking her eyes off Elon, "confirm that the external traffic is still only touching public-facing assets. I want a hard line between them and anything internal. If there's bleed, I want to know before our visitor does." "Yes, boss," Arjun muttered, turning back to his keyboard. "Segmenting now." "Leon," Vereena continued, raising her voice. "Any signs of physical tampering? Doors forced, weird badge swipes?" "Negative," Leon replied. All access logs look normal from the last 2 hours. It's clean. Whoever this is, they're not in the building. That's one blessing, Mia said. A small one. Verena folded her arms. She was still watching Elon as if he were a puzzle she hadn't decided whether to solve or throw away. You used a staging bug, she said. On an internal machine. To write one sentence to our dashboards. Yes. Why that sentence? He glanced up at the banner, still flickering over the data. If your cleaner can do this, what can your enemies do? Because it's true, he said quietly. Because you laughed at me. And because if someone who's supposed to be invisible can walk through your defenses that easily, then the people being paid to be seen need a wake-up call. Her jaw tightened at the mention of her laughter. A muscle jumped near her eye. You're not invisible, she said. You're on payroll. Then you should decide if you're paying me to push a mop or to see what's in front of me, he replied. The audacity of it took him by surprise as much as it did the others. His chest felt tight, like he'd just sprinted. But the words were out now, and there was a strange relief in that. No more pretending. Arjun glanced between them, caught between loyalty to his boss and the uncomfortable truth hanging in the air. Boss, he said. Whoever's out there just shifted tactics again. I think they detected the slowdown. They're fanning out, trying subdomains we never advertised. How? Mia demanded. How do they know what to look for? Because your engineers reuse names, Elon thought. Because you leave breadcrumbs in TLS certificates and staging URLs in QA servers that accidentally respond to the wrong host header. He took a breath. You have a leak, he said. Not a data breach. A metadata leak. Your infrastructure doesn't match your marketing, but your certificates do. DNS entries. Registry records. Things no one ever cleans up because they're boring. Arjun swore again, this time in a language Elon didn't recognize. He's not wrong, Arjun said grimly. I'm seeing requests against paths that only exist in our earliest prototypes. Stuff we never sunset properly. They're failing, but the 404s are giving away too much. Verena's gaze flicked to the main map, where a cluster of red dots pulsed in Eastern Europe, another in an anonymous cloud region. A line traced between them like a heartbeat. Can you stop them? She asked. For now. Arjun shrugged, hands still flying. Yeah. We can rate limit, geofence, throw up captchas so aggressive they make grown men cry. But that's just aspirin. It doesn't fix the disease. The disease, Elon said softly, is that you built a fortress with picture windows no one remembered to tint. Verena turned on him. And you, she said. The cleaner who just admitted to exploiting a live bug, what exactly do you propose we do in the next 5 minutes that my team can't? Her tone was daring him to overstep. Daring him to prove he really was as delusional as she'd accused. His heart slammed against his ribs hard enough to hurt. Give me a terminal and a quarantine shell, he said. No production access. No client data. Just the path between AegisNet's internal models and whatever's watching that outside traffic. Let me see how they're reading you. You've been looking at this attack from the outside in. I know how people like this think from the inside out. She studied him. Behind her, the war room screens continued to update, attack graphs shifting, code scrolling, alerts stacking. Time was not on their side. This is insane, Mia whispered. We can't let a janitor into our incident response. The board will. The board isn't here, Verena said. Our attacker is. She took a step closer to Elon, close enough that he could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the faint sheen of exhaustion on her skin under the cool polish. You have 60 seconds, she said. The irony of the number wasn't lost on either of them. You touch anything outside the shell and I will personally make sure you never work in this industry again. Or in any industry that requires a background check. Understood? Understood, he said. Arjun stared. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, Verena replied. If he's lying, we'll know. If he's not, and he can buy us more time before this thing escalates, I'm not going to leave a resource on the table because his badge is the wrong color. She grabbed a spare laptop from the corner of the room and slapped it down on the nearest console, fingers flying to plug it into the isolated incident network. Her hands moved with the calm speed of someone who'd done this before, though perhaps never under quite these circumstances. Shell only, she told Arjun. Jail him to the incident subnet. Read only on logs, read-write only on a scratchpad. Log every command he runs. If he sneezes, I want it timestamped. Yes, boss, Arjun muttered, still looking like he'd stepped into a parallel universe. Verena gestured at the chair. Sit. Elon moved toward the laptop like a man approaching an altar. The keyboard was different from the one he used to own. The muscle memory of his fingers found new distances, new resistance. But the feeling of a terminal opening, black background, blinking cursor, hit him in the chest like coming home after a long exile. Timer, Verena said. 60 seconds. Go. The cursor winked at him, bright and sharp. He exhaled once, long and slow, letting the noise of the room fall away. The hum of equipment, the clipped voices, the distant throb of the city outside the glass, everything blurred into background. The world narrowed to a prompt. He began. First command, he tailed the AegisNet event stream for the attack source addresses. No filters, just raw events. The lines poured in, a fire hose of data. Too much to parse by hand. Second command, he piped the events into a simple grouping script, binning them by origin. Patterns emerged like constellations in fog. Third command, he pulled the decision scores for each request. AegisNet's internal models tagged each connection with a 1,000-dimensional judgment that distilled to a single float between 0 and 1. Confidence of maliciousness. The numbers danced. 0.32, 0.41, 0.79, 0.92. Your models are too forgiving near the boundaries, he murmured. They're weighting prior traffic history too heavily. Arjun leaned over his shoulder despite himself. What? They've seen some of these IP ranges before, Elon said, fingers still moving, combining fields, plotting distributions. From scanners, from security researchers, from misconfigured clients. AegisNet learned to treat them as noisy but not lethal. Your attacker is hopping through them like stepping stones. Verena checked the time on her watch. 30 seconds. Elon wrote a quick stanza of code in the shell, no frameworks, no dependencies, just a handful of inline calculations that any junior engineer could have done in a calmer moment. He recomputed the risk scores, this time weighting the sequence of actions over the reputation of the source. Sequence, not geography. Stories, not snapshots. The change was stark. The same incoming wave lit up with different numbers. 0.91, 0.93, 0.97. This is how they see you, he said. As a sequence of reactions. You've been teaching your models to judge IPs like static characters. They're not. They're moves in a game. He pushed the alternative scores into the scratchpad and flagged them with a simple, almost childish label, if_thresh_shifted. Arjun, he said, I'm not asking you to swap in these numbers permanently. That would be insane in a live incident. But if you temporarily dial up your sensitivity to sequences that look like this, he tapped the screen, where the scratchpad highlighted the attacker's pattern. You'll choke off their most efficient path. They'll have to fall back to slower tactics. Slower means more time to respond, Mia said. More time before we have to tell investors anything. Or before we have to tell regulators, Verena added. 10 seconds, she warned. Elon's fingers flew. He packaged the scratchpad transformation into a small, self-contained function and dropped it into the test harness that fed synthetic data through AegisNet's decision engine. The system chewed, measured, compared. The graphs on one of the side monitors shifted. False positive rates ticked up, but not catastrophically. True positive rates for the attacker's pattern spiked. Arjun let out a low whistle. He's not wrong, he said. We can mirror this into a shadow policy, apply it only to the incident subnet. If it blows up, we roll it back. But if it doesn't? If it doesn't, our phantom at the gates suddenly finds every door heavier, Verena said. Time. Hands off, she ordered. Elon took his fingers off the keys. They trembled in the air for a moment before he curled them slowly into his palms. He sat back. The chair creaked softly. He hadn't written anything magical. There was no genius in his code, no elegant new algorithm. He'd simply shifted the lens, forced the system to see the story the attacker was telling instead of the isolated letters. It was, in its own way, the same thing he'd been trying to do all his life, show people that patterns meant something. Arjun, Verena said. Deploy the shadow policy to the incident subnet only. Now. On it. Lines of command rolled across Arjun's screen, ripples moving outward in the invisible infrastructure like a stone tossed into water. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the main graph hiccuped. The incoming connections from the attackers' clusters hit a wall they hadn't expected. Requests that had been skating through with a mild suspicion flag suddenly slammed into a hard block. Attempts to adapt flailed, sequences broke in mid-step. The pattern turned jagged, erratic. They see it, Elon said softly. They know you've changed your posture. Good, Verena replied. Let them feel it. The red dots on the geolocation map began to slow. New probes sprouted from other regions, tentative and scattered. They're testing for overcorrection, Arjun muttered. Seeing if we've gone paranoid across the board. They're not getting much. The shadow policy's doing what it should. Leon's voice came over the intercom again, edged with something like awe. External anomalies dropping. Still some noise, but the main surge just fizzled. Mia sagged against the wall, hand covering her eyes for a moment. We're not out of it, Elon said, almost reflexively. They'll be back. They've learned something about you tonight. They'll use it. People like that don't just shrug and walk away. Neither do we, Verena said quietly. She stepped closer to the laptop, studying the scratchpad function on the screen. The code was short, messy in the way only speed-coded scripts could be. You did this in under a minute, she said. I had a head start, Elon replied. I've been watching your dashboards for weeks. Once you've seen enough false positives, you start to understand how your models think. Mia stared at him as if he'd confessed to a new crime. You've been, what? Studying us? This whole time? I've been cleaning your offices, he said. And yes, reading what people leave open on their screens. You can call that a breach of etiquette if you want. But if you build a company on visibility, maybe don't assume the only eyes that matter are the ones you pay 6 figures. The words landed in the middle of the room like a small, controlled explosion. Arjun looked away first, shame and something like grudging respect warring on his face. Boss, he said, the immediate incident looks contained. We should assume whatever's out there has a copy of our public-facing map now, but they didn't get inside. At least, not tonight. Logs, Verena replied. Full review. Correlate every blip. I want to know exactly where they came from, what they saw, and what they tried. We got lucky. Luck is not a strategy. She turned back to Elon. And you, she said. You just admitted to unauthorized access. You also just helped blunt an attack that could have gutted us on the eve of the biggest demo in this company's history. He held her gaze. So which matters more? Both, she said. That's the problem. The adrenaline in his veins began to ebb, leaving a hollow ache in its wake. Now came the part where reality reasserted itself. Where contracts and policies and power settled over what he'd done like dust over fresh footprints. I'll pack up my locker, he said softly. If I even have one. Mia blinked. You think this is decided? You're a security company, Elon replied. You can't keep the janitor who broke into your systems on staff. That's not a good look for investors. Investors, Verena said, care about one thing above all, that their money is safe. Their money is our contracts. Our contracts exist because we keep people's systems from falling over when something like tonight happens. She walked around the console, stopping a foot away from him. You humiliated my team, she said. You embarrassed me. You took a legitimate vulnerability and used it as a vehicle for a very public "I told you so." You put words in 10-foot letters across my incident wall. Her voice was cold, measured. Each sentence felt like a blow. And you were right, she added. The words hung in the air like a glitch in reality. Mia's head snapped up. Arjun stopped typing. You were right, Verena repeated. You shouldn't have had that access. The debug bridge should never have been live. The screens should have been locked. We got comfortable inside our own mythology. She exhaled slowly. So here's what's going to happen, she said. You're going to write down, in excruciating detail, every step you took tonight. From the moment you touched that unlocked terminal to the last command you ran in this shell. Arjun is going to cross-check it against logs. If anything doesn't match, if you forget something, this conversation is over and your next one will be with people who carry badges I don't control. A chill ran down Elon's spine. Understood. If it matches, Verena went on, and if we can verify that you didn't touch any client environments, didn't exfiltrate any data, didn't plant anything that wasn't already there, then we're going to have another conversation about what you actually want. He stared at her, not trusting what he thought he'd just heard. What I want, he echoed. Yes, she said. Because people who can do what you just did in 60 seconds don't push mops for long unless life has gone very wrong in some other respect. And I don't believe in wasting useful wrong turns. Mia's eyes widened. You're considering hiring him? Verena didn't look away from Elon. I'm considering the fact that he already works here, she said. Just not in the department that matches his risk profile. The phrase was clinical, but there was something almost human beneath it. Elon's mind spun. For months, this building had been a reminder of everything he'd lost, a world he used to inhabit from the inside, now visible only through the streaks he wiped from its surfaces. He'd imagined 100 confrontations, 100 ways things might blow up if he ever pushed against the invisible wall. He'd never imagined this. You don't know anything about me, he said. About why I'm here. About what I've done. Then tell me, Verena replied. After you write the report. After we do the post-mortem on tonight. After we get through the demo without the world finding out how close we came to falling on our face. She glanced at the clock. It's almost 1. The investors arrive at 9. Arjun, rotate incident response shifts. Mia, clear my calendar for everything that isn't absolutely required. I'll sleep when we're on the other side of this demo or in a different line of work. And him? Mia asked, nodding at Elon. He stays, Verena said. For now. Under supervision. In this room. She looked back at him. You wanted to be seen? Congratulations. You're about to wish you were invisible again. They set him up at a corner console, the laptop still chained to the incident subnet, logs streaming past in endless columns. Arjun sat 2 chairs away, a sentinel with a keyboard, occasionally muttering to colleagues on chat. Mia bounced between calls, emails, and whispered updates, her fingers blurring over her phone. The adrenaline ebbed, replaced by the grinding fatigue of the night shift. Outside the glass, the city eventually shifted from midnight neon to the softer gray of pre-dawn. Cleaning staff on other floors clocked out. The skeleton crew preparing breakfast in the lobby cafe turned on the lights. Twice, Leon brought up coffee in paper cups, setting one near Elon's elbow without comment. Their eyes met briefly, a flash of unspoken "what the hell, man?" passing between them. Elon didn't have an answer. He wrote. Every command. Every observation. Every rationalization. He typed until his wrists ached, then kept typing. The report grew into something that was half confession, half technical walkthrough. He didn't spare himself. He included the petty sting of Verina's laughter, the wound to his pride, the quiet hours watching unlocked screens while he wiped fingerprints from their edges. When he finished, his cursor blinked at the end of a paragraph that read, "I did this because I could, because I was angry, and because I believed you needed to see what I could see. That combination is dangerous." "I know." He stared at that last line for a long time. Then added, "If you fire me after this, I'll understand. But at least you'll be firing someone you've actually looked at." He sent the report to Arjun and Verena, then sat back, hands suddenly empty. Time blurred. Engineers rotated in, bleary-eyed, to relieve Arjun's team. Fresh coffee appeared, then disappeared. The amber banner on the main display vanished, replaced by a more sedate panel, Incident 2317, active, contained. Around 6:30, Verena disappeared for half an hour. When she returned, her hair was pulled back into a tighter knot and she'd traded her jacket for a simple black sweater. She looked less like a myth and more like a person who had decided to endure rather than impress. She read his report on a tablet, standing near the glass, the city's pale morning reflected over the text. He watched her eyes move, her brow furrow, the occasional tightening of her jaw. She didn't interrupt. Didn't comment. When she finished, she turned the screen off and stood there for another 30 seconds, looking at her own faint reflection. Then she walked back to him. "You're thorough," she said. "You told me to be," he replied. "You also could have lied," she said. "Or left things out that we might never have caught." "You didn't." He gave a small, humorless laugh. "If I was going to lie, I wouldn't have written anything down in the first place." "True," she said. "But people aren't always internally consistent. That's why AegisNet exists." She set the tablet down on the console, folding her arms. "I ran your name," she said. "While you were writing that." A cold fist closed around his spine. "What did you find?" he asked. "Less than I expected," she admitted. "No criminal record. No lawsuits. A handful of online handles connected to security forums and old bug bounty programs. Some of the write-ups are impressive. One of them cites a researcher named Nulro whose style of commentary sounds suspiciously like your writing in this report." Heat crawled up his neck. He hadn't used that handle in years. "I had a different life," he said quietly. "Before my sister's accident. Before the bills. Before I had to choose between chasing bounties that might or might not pay and taking a job that definitely would." "And you chose this," Verena said, glancing at his coveralls. "I chose paying her physical therapist on time," he corrected. "Lumendyne pays above minimum, offers health insurance, and doesn't ask too many questions about why a guy with my resume applies to clean floors." Something softened in her gaze for a fraction of a second. "Your sister." "Alive," he said quickly. "Mostly mobile. Stubborn as hell. The kind of person who would kill me if I did anything that put her care at risk." "That tracks," Mia murmured from her perch near the door, where she pretended not to be listening. Verena drummed her fingers once on the back of the chair. "I'm not in the business of charity," she said at last. "I'm in the business of risk management and strategic advantage. So let's be clear, the only reason we're having this conversation is because you demonstrated value under fire that outweighs, for now, the risk you represent." "For now," he repeated. She nodded. "I am going to offer you a choice." His heart kicked hard. "Choice number 1, she said. You walk away. Today. We pay you a severance package. We classify last night as an internal resource test that got out of hand. Legal will write something appropriately vague. You sign an NDA with enough teeth to make you think very carefully before telling this story at parties. You go back to whatever your life would have been without Lumendyne." "And choice number 2, he asked. "Choice number 2, she said, you stop being invisible. You come onto my security team under a probationary contract. You work under Arjun. You submit to more scrutiny than you will be comfortable with for at least a year. You signed documents that would make your NDA sign self from choice 1 faint. You agree that the stunt you pulled tonight will never happen again in this building or any environment we control, unless it is explicitly part of a sanctioned test with written sign-off from 3 levels above you. Her eyes held his. And you accept that every time something goes wrong, someone will look at you first. That sounds, he began, then stopped, searching for the word. Like a cage, she suggested. Like a microscope, he said. Same principle, she replied. Different framing. Mia shifted. Verena, are you sure? The optics. The optics, Verena said, can be managed. Lumendyne hires from within. Cleaner to security engineer in 1 night. It'll make a hell of a blog post someday. After we've made sure we're not glorifying reckless behavior. She looked back at Elon. I don't care about the story right now, she said. I care that you see things my people missed. That you think in ways they don't. That you understand both how attackers move and how pride blinds defenders. Those are assets I'm not going to hand to a competitor because I was offended at being laughed at in my own war room. She paused. Even if I deserve to be offended. The admission was quiet, almost lost under the soft whir of the fans. Elon swallowed. The room felt both too small and too large, the future compressed into 2 diverging paths at his feet. What about my job now, he asked. If I take choice 2. Do I just swap uniforms? Not overnight, she said. Your current contract is with facilities. We'd have to transfer that. HR will have a coronary, but they'll live. The probationary period will be brutal. You won't touch production for months. You'll start by trying to break our test rigs in every way you can imagine, then documenting each one with the level of detail you showed tonight. If you wash out, you go back to the cart or out the door, depending on how much damage you've done. And if I take choice 1, he asked. You get peace, she said. And the knowledge that you walked away before this place swallowed you whole. He thought of his sister, of their tiny apartment with its mismatched furniture and the plants she insisted on keeping alive on the windowsill. He thought of the nights he'd lain awake wondering if he'd wasted everything he'd once been good at, trading it for stability that felt like a slow suffocation. He thought of the terminal's blinking cursor under his fingertips, the way his mind had leapt into that space like a muscle remembering a forgotten exercise. What would you choose, he asked, if you were me? Her lips twitched. I'm not you. I know, he said. But you were a coder once. Before the boardrooms, before the magazine covers. Before the Dragon Lady myth. Arjun, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, snorted softly. Verena's gaze flicked to him, then back to Elon. If I were you, she said slowly, and I still love the work enough to risk blowing up my life again, I'd take choice 2. And then I'd spend the next year proving that the worst thing anyone ever said about me wasn't that I was delusional, but that they underestimated how far I'd go to keep people safe once I had the tools to do it. He absorbed that in silence. And if I don't still love it, he asked. Then you shouldn't be anywhere near a system people trust with their livelihoods, she said. Including this one. The clock on the wall ticked toward 7. The sun crept higher, turning the glass walls into mirrors that overlaid their reflections over the city. I need an answer, Verena said. Soon. There's a world where you regret either choice. But there isn't one where standing still will save you. He looked at the mop propped against the wall, its head still damp from the stain that had started all this. He looked at the laptop, the terminal window still open, cursor ready if someone nudged it. He thought of all the times he'd been told to shrink, to stay in his lane, to stop seeing the cracks. He thought of the sentence he'd written across their world in amber letters, if your cleaner can do this, what can your enemies do? Maybe, he thought, for once the person holding the warning sign didn't have to walk away before anyone did anything about it. He met Verena's eyes. Choice 2, he said. His voice was steady this time. I'll take the microscope. Mia exhaled sharply, somewhere between exasperation and relief. Of course you will, she muttered. Verena nodded once. Then go home, she said. He blinked. What? Go home, she repeated. Take a shower. Sleep for 4 hours. Come back at noon. Not in coveralls. In whatever you used to wear when you spent your days in front of a keyboard. Arjun will have a stack of onboarding documents tall enough to kill you if it falls over. And the demo? He asked. The demo is my problem, she said. Not yours. You've done enough for one night. He believed her. That surprised him almost as much as anything else. Leon will escort you out, she added. Not because I think you're going to suddenly sabotage anything, but because my legal department would have a seizure if they knew I let you wander unescorted after all this. He nodded. Fair. He stood. His legs felt unsteady, as if he'd been sitting for a much longer time. He realized, with something like shock, that he hadn't once thought about his cleaning route in the last few hours. At the door, he paused and looked back. The war room had transformed while he'd sat in it. What had once been a theater of invulnerability now looked like what it truly was, a place where humans wrestled with uncertainty using imperfect tools. Verena stood at the center of it, tablet in hand, eyes already on the next graph. Arjun was barking quiet instructions to the incoming day team. Mia was drafting emails, her mouth moving silently as she tested phrases in her head. They looked smaller, somehow. More real. You said something earlier, Elon said. About expertise and responsibility going together. Verena looked up. I remember. He nodded. I'm ready to take responsibility, he said. Not just for what I broke tonight, but for what I can help fix. Her expression didn't soften. But something in it shifted, a tiny recalibration. We'll see, she said. Now go. Before I change my mind and make you stay for the investor Q&A. He almost smiled. The hallway outside the war room felt different on the walk out. Less like a boundary he wasn't supposed to cross, more like a liminal space between one version of his life and another. Leon was waiting near the elevators, hands in his pockets, expression a careful mix of curiosity and restraint. So, Leon said as the elevator doors closed behind them, beginning their descent. Rumor from the cameras is you saved the company and almost got yourself arrested in the same night. That about right? Something like that, Elon said. Leon gave a low whistle. You okay? I don't know yet, Elon admitted. Ask me after I sleep. They rode in silence for a few floors, the numbers ticking down. Around floor 6, Leon cleared his throat. For what it's worth, he said, when the alert popped and your message showed up, I thought it was some fancy scheduled thing they'd cooked up for the demo. Like, look how fast we can detect internal threats. Didn't occur to me it was you. Didn't occur to them either, Elon said. Leon chuckled. Yeah, I'm guessing that was educational. The elevator dinged at the lobby. The glass doors to the street revealed a city waking up, buses rumbling by, early commuters clutching to-go cups, a jogger waiting at the crosswalk. You coming back? Leon asked as they stepped out. Elon looked up at the Lumendine logo etched into the glass above the entrance. Trust engineered. Yeah, he said. Apparently I am. Leon bumped his shoulder lightly. Then I guess I'll see you in something other than that jumpsuit next time. Don't get used to it, Elon said. I'm not sure I remember how to dress like a person who belongs upstairs. Pretty sure you earned the right to figure it out, Leon replied. The morning air hit Elon's face like a reset. He stepped out onto the sidewalk, blinking against the brightness. The exhaustion crashed over him in a wave, but beneath it was a thread of something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility. He took the bus home, the rumble of the engine and the murmur of half-awake passengers lulling his adrenaline-frayed nerves. He texted his sister, going to be late this morning. Long shift. Explain later, and got back a string of concerned emojis and a promise of reheated leftovers. By the time he fell face-first onto his bed, the events of the night felt like something that might, in another life, have been a story he told about someone else. He slept like a man who'd been holding his breath for years without realizing it. The second time he walked into Lumendine that day, the lobby security guard looked up in confusion. No cart. No jumpsuit. Just Elon in jeans, a gray t-shirt under a faded button-down, and a pair of sneakers whose soles had seen better days. ID, the guard asked automatically. Elon handed over his badge. The green plastic rectangle with the broom icon looked almost comical against his new old clothes. The guard scanned it, frowned at the terminal, then scanned it again. Huh, he said. You've been reclassified. Yeah, Elon said. So I've been told. The elevator to the 12th floor hummed under his feet. The familiar ding sounded different, somehow, like the same note in a different song. When the doors opened, Mia was waiting, tablet in one hand, coffee in the other. You're late, she said. It's 12:08, he replied. And I've already fielded 3 emails from legal, 2 from HR, and 1 from PR with your name in the subject line, she shot back. Welcome to visibility. He followed her to a different side of the floor this time, past the open office area and the still faint stain where the foe had once been. The war room door stood ajar, a new sign temporarily taped beside the keypad, incident response, authorized personnel only. Does that include me? He asked. For now, Mia said. Don't make me regret it. Inside, the room buzzed with a different kind of energy than the night before. Tired, yes, but threaded with a crackling focus. Screens still showed post-incident graphs, but now they shared space with a countdown timer labeled, Demo T02:51:07. Verena stood at the front, speaking quietly with a cluster of engineers. She glanced up when Elon entered, her expression unreadable. Good, she said. You came back. I considered running away to become a barista, he said. But I hear the security posture in coffee shops is even worse. A couple of nearby engineers snorted. The tension in the room eased by a millimeter. This, Verena said, gesturing to the nearest console, is your new home. For the next few weeks, at least. Arjun will walk you through our internal tooling, our testing frameworks, our risk register. You will be buried in documentation. You will be bored. You will occasionally be asked to purposely break things in ways that won't show up on Twitter. I can live with that, he said. You'll also be present for the demo, she added. Quietly. In the back. You won't be on stage, you won't be in any slides. But if anything even smells like last night, I want your eyes on it. He nodded. Understood. As for last night, she said, we tell the truth to the board, we experienced an attempted external intrusion that was contained. We omit certain colorful details about internal alert messaging. We frame the policy adjustments you prototyped as a team effort. Because they will be, once they've been properly implemented and reviewed. That's fair, he said. She gave him a long, searching look. Trust is not binary, she said. It's not on or off. It's an accumulation of correct decisions over time. You have 1 on the ledger. Maybe 2. Don't spend them all at once. I won't, he said. Good, she replied. Because despite what our tagline says, we are not actually omniscient. We just work very hard to be less wrong than the people trying to break us. He smiled, a small, genuine thing. That, he said, I can help with. The demo went off like a carefully controlled explosion. Investors crowded into the main auditorium on the 10th floor, their suits and dresses a sea of dark fabric and cautious optimism. Cameras waited at the back, ready to capture sound bites that could be edited into future highlight reels. A bank of screens behind the stage displayed looping animations of AegisNet's SHIELD logo intercepting stylized threats. From his place in the shadows near the side wall, Elon watched the polished version of the story he'd lived the night before. Verena took the stage in a simple black blazer, her hair pulled back, her voice steady. She talked about the evolution of threats, about how attackers had shifted from brute force to subtlety, from noise to narrative. She described AegisNet's ability to read patterns over time, to understand not just what systems were doing, but why. She didn't mention the moment those same models had nearly missed the story unfolding at their own gates. When she cued the live demo, Arjun stood in the wings, fingers hovering near a console. Traffic patterns appeared on screen, simulated attacks rising and falling like waves against a digital shoreline. As part of the script, a rogue internal node lit up in bright orange, its anomalous behavior detected and quarantined by AegisNet's algorithms. The audience murmured appreciatively at the smooth choreography of defense. Elon knew, with a peculiar mixture of pride and unease, that some of the scoring tweaks behind that display had been influenced by the quick and dirty scratchpad logic he'd thrown together in the middle of the night. He also knew that the polished version had been scrubbed, tested, and expanded by people who'd been doing this under pressure for years. He wasn't the hero of the story. Not alone. But he was in it now. As Verena walked the investors through dashboards and case studies, she paused at one slide longer than the others. It showed a simple graph, a spike in anomalous activity followed by a sharp drop. Last night, she said, AegisNet flagged an attempted intrusion against our own perimeter. We contained it. We learned from it. And this morning, less than 12 hours later, the models that protected us are already protecting our clients better, because every attack, successful or not, is a data point in how we adapt. Mia, standing near Elon, whispered under her breath, "That's the sanitized version." He nodded. "It's not entirely untrue." Mia glanced sideways at him. "No," she said. "It's not." When the demo ended to applause and the sound of investors calculating potential returns in their heads, Elon slipped out before the networking sessions began. He'd had enough of being surrounded by people who didn't yet know what had almost gone wrong. Back in the war room, the countdown timer had been replaced by a calmer display, incident status, monitoring. A small note at the bottom read, "Policy adjustments, in review." Arjun leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head. "Well," Arjun said, "you picked one hell of a night to show up." "Timing is everything," Elon said. Arjun studied him for a moment. "I'm still mad at you," he said. "For the alert message. For making us look like idiots in our own house." "Fair," Elon replied. "But," Arjun added, "I've also seen senior hires freeze under less pressure than you handled last night. You didn't do anything magical. But you saw a different angle faster than we did, and that mattered." He offered his hand. "Welcome to the team," he said. "Probationary menace." Elon took his hand, grip firm. "Thanks," he said. "I'll try to keep the menace focused outward." "Do that," Arjun said. "And next time you feel the urge to write on my dashboards, you run it past me first." "No promises," Elon said, then relented at Arjun's look. "Kidding." "Mostly." Mia rolled her eyes. "I'm going to age 10 years this quarter," she muttered. That night, after another long day of onboarding, documentation, and an exhausting crash course in Lumendine's internal politics, Elon sat on his small balcony with his sister, the city lights twinkling around them. She listened to his halting account of the night before, leaving out specifics that would violate the NDA he'd signed that afternoon, but capturing the spirit of it. The humiliation. The anger. The terminal. The choice. "So you're going to be a hacker again," she said, nudging his shoulder. "Just with permission this time." "Something like that," he said. "A paid worrier." "You were always a worrier," she said fondly. "Now you get a badge that matches." He laughed, tension draining. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Of messing up. Of becoming the thing I used to hate. Of losing the part of me that did this because I wanted to build safer systems, not just because it pays well." She considered that. "Then don't lose it," she said simply. "You always told me that good security isn't about paranoia. It's about caring. About assuming you're not as smart as you think you are and planning around that." "That sounds like something I'd say," he admitted. "So care," she said. "And remember you're delusional." He raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "In the good way," she said, grinning. You see things other people don't. You think people can be better than they are. You believe that systems can be fixed instead of just thrown away. That's delusional. And it's why I'm still walking. He looked at her cane leaning against the wall, at the faint scars on her hands. Keep that kind of delusion, she said. Maybe it's what they've been missing. He thought of Verena's face in the amber glow, of the way her voice had shifted when she admitted he'd been right. He thought of Arjun's grudging handshake, of Mia's exasperated smirk that hid a threat of respect. He thought of the investors clapping in the auditorium, oblivious to the invisible war that had played out a few hours before their coffee. Yeah, he said softly. Maybe. He leaned back in his chair, the night air cool against his skin, the city's digital heartbeat thrumming invisibly around them. He knew there would be other nights. Other alerts. Other moments when the line between responsibility and recklessness blurred in the glow of a terminal. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was in the fight for the right reasons. Not to prove he was smarter. Not to make a name no one would ever see attached to a product. But to stand in the space between people and the systems they trusted, eyes open, hands steady, willing to be the one who saw the cracks and said, out loud, that they mattered. And maybe, just maybe, to make sure that the next time someone laughed at the person pushing the cart, it was because they'd just told a joke, not because the world had decided they weren't worth listening to. Because now, when someone asked who kept Lumendine's $2 billion machine honest, the answer would no longer be a faceless team hidden behind dashboards. It would include the name of a man who'd once been invisible, who'd hacked the system that overlooked him in 60 seconds, and then, when given the chance, chose to stay and help fix it instead of walking away. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.